Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancorp. My guest today is none other than Andy Mckee. A true virtuoso of the acoustic guitar, Andy's name is synonymous with innovation and instrumental prowess. Andy's fingerstyle guitar technique and creative compositions have catapulted him to international fame. His music has touched millions worldwide. Andy and I talk about his love for Iron Maiden and the impact that Michael Hedges had upon his playing. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell for notifications. Now, let's hang with Andy Mckee. One thing that you've done that is a great segue is you've got Somewhere in Time on your left shoulder.
That's right.
What a brilliant way for guys like us raised in the Midwest. We might be different ages, but in a lot of the interviews that I've done recently, this topic about geography comes up. Where you were raised, roughly what generation you were raised, and then if it was like colder climates, it had a way of informing your musical trajectory in the sense of a lot of us are very, very completely given over to music because at a very young age, being indoors all that time, others not so great, and you spend a lot of insular stuff. It's a perfect opportunity to get into either music or books or films or something like that, very indoor pursuits.
Yeah, wow. I never thought about that. There might be some truth to that, I suppose.
Yeah, so I mean, which is a nice segue into, I would guess that as a kid, becoming an avid metal aficionado, it also kind of plays into when you're younger and you have a lot of, you're changing physically and your physiology and your body chemistry is changing and you're getting hormones. Metal's like the perfect fit for that, whether it be Sabbath or Iron Maiden or Rush. So I'd be interested in however you'd like to field that, your early, your pre-Michael Hedges era.
Life.
We'll get to all that kind of stuff, but
Sure. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. That's kind of fun. I mean, I guess, growing up, my parents did have music on quite a bit. I don't have a musical family as far as nobody sings or actually plays an instrument or anything like that, but always, had parties and my parents liked to entertain. So, music and all that. And I just heard, a lot of like 70s and 60s stuff through them growing up. And then I actually have an older sister, though. She's 8 years older than I am. So, I was born in 1979. So as the 80s were coming up, my older sister, was playing music too. And then she'd put on MTV when it, came out. And so I'd be seeing videos on there. And I remember it must, I think it was 1986 or so when Somewhere in Time came out. I think it's probably around there. My sister had been like taping videos from MTV. So she'd have her own little like mixtapes of her favorite videos. And I was just watching it one day. And I remember Home Sweet Home from Motley Crue was on there. I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah.
The piano and just the kind of story it tells, I thought it was really cool. But then the next video was Wasted Years from Iron Maiden. And I was just like floored. I couldn't believe the music, that guitar in the intro. I didn't even know, what I was hearing at the time. It could have been a keyboard or I didn't know anything, but I thought that sounded so cool. And then the video had all these images of Eddie, Iron Maiden's mascot, this sort of zombified human, and it was just, I was just totally in love. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen or heard too. So yeah, I became an instant Iron Maiden fan. I started growing my hair out, and I was like 8 years old and going to the grocery store with my mom, and they're like, "Oh, your daughter's so lovely." Yeah, great. Yeah, but I had long hair through most of my life till the hairline started going a little too far back, so I had to take it out. But anyway, yeah, I was really into metal all through my teenage years, and I started playing guitar when I was 13, though, and that was because I heard Eric Johnson play, and he had his album Via Musicom, probably 91, I think, 92. And and I heard clips of Dover on the radio. He was going to be opening for Rush at a nearby venue, and this commercial played just a clip of I was like, whoa! I had no idea you could like. It sounded like he was really kind of singing a melody. I guess I'd never really noticed guitar like that before, and I was like, I'd always loved instrumental music though too from a young age. So hearing this instrumental guitar, I just wanted to have a guitar for my birthday. So my dad got me a classical used guitar for like $50 on my 13th birthday, and just kind of played around on that and tried to figure out what I could do. Tried to learn Crazy Train and Enter Sandman on nylon string guitar, and it was just not sounding. Yeah, not nearly as cool. So I went, well, what can I learn? And I took a look at some Led Zeppelin things, and
Yeah.
Dust in the Wind and a few other acoustic guitar songs that I'd heard in my life, and started to work on those. But eventually got an electric and really shifted into playing a lot of electric guitar, and got into trying to learn Eric Johnson songs and Joe Satriani, and Dream Theater came out right around then, and I became a huge Dream Theater fan. Still like their stuff a lot, and just kind of focused on electric for a while, and then switched to the acoustic shortly after that. But yeah, sorry if that was a bit long, but I don't know if there was any. You want me to clear up anything? Or?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it all informs when somebody listens to the body of your work, if they've got one or maybe they have all of your albums and listening to it, it's kind of cool to get an idea of what the impetus in your composition, because that's what it strikes me, is that even though you have amazing facility on the instrument, you're really coming from it from a composer's sensibilities. The songs are really strong and they're beautiful, and even the arrangements of the covers are just really brilliant. And you're reminding us what we loved about those songs, because maybe you're shedding light on something that maybe the average listener hadn't thought of. If you're pulling away having somebody sing, like the song "I'll Be Over You," it's really
Yeah,
harmonically, it's really beautiful.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a really cool thing when you have the ability to display a side of a song from a composer's perspective. There's something innate in your thought processes that this would be a great song of all the Toto tunes to feature, because there's something about it, melodically, harmonically, whatever, that would be an interesting way of displaying a tune. So that's
Well, yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I mean, yeah, all the arrangements I've done, I guess, were just pieces that I felt something from, and I
right.
tried to, why I wanted to do it just kind of for fun in a way, but I also wanted to see if I could capture whatever that feeling is that I got when I heard those tunes, and just put them on instrumental guitar and see what comes up. But yeah, I guess music has always been really powerful to me for some reason, more than a lot of other things, entertainment, I guess. And so whenever I, go to play a show these days, or if I'm coming up with new music, I just want it to say something really. I don't even really think about techniques and things, and how difficult is this piece. I think you can get caught up in that for a while when you're a guitar player, trying to push yourself, which is good, of course. But I mean, trying to push yourself above everyone else, like I can do this better than anybody, or and that kind of takes you away from the core of what music's about. You can have your facility and technique and everything, but at the end of the day, you want to try to say something. So I try to keep that in mind, whenever I'm
Yeah.
playing a show or writing something.
That's one of the great beauties about folks that are playing acoustic guitar as their primary instrument, is that it doesn't come with, or maybe it does because I'm not in the world. So maybe you can help illuminate this. It doesn't seem like it comes with the same guitar slinger mentality. I don't imagine that there's forums on acoustic guitar players on how fast they're playing, or
Yeah.
kind of like it's, and everybody has this to some degree. They want to pick who's your favorite basketball player, who's your favorite football player, and why. Well, this guy has more Super Bowls. This guy has more NBA championships. I've never thought music fit into those kind of rankings.
Yeah.
Didn't make a lot of sense how you could say so and so was better than so and so, because it
Yeah, I was. That's funny. I was really thinking about that the other day when I was driving, and for some reason I came up with this ice cream analogy. So I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like ice cream too much. But if you have learned how to make some ice cream and you've got like a flavor, and
Yeah,
that's your flavor, and someone says, "Man, I really like that pistachio ice cream that guy's got. It's so good." And then the other guys, "Well, I like this guy's, whatever, chocolate, blah blah blah." It's
right.
it's really more like that. It's if you're at the point where you're creating music, then there's nobody, and you've found kind of your identity on the guitar. That's another thing too, I guess. I saw a little interview earlier today with Nuno Betancourt, and he was talking about how Joe Satriani was recently on Howard Stern,
Yeah,
and they're doing the Van Halen kind of, well, Sammy Hagar and Joe Satriani and the guys are going out, and so they're going to do some Van Halen tunes, and I think Joe tried to play Mean Street, and
yeah,
he didn't nail it or whatever. I didn't see it, but and so I guess there's people saying, like, trying to tag Joe Satriani on social media saying this is how you do it, and it's just like, Joe Satriani is Joe Satriani. He's got his whole ID. And same with Eddie Van Halen, and same with Nuno. And so it's like once you've got your own identity too, that's a key thing, I guess, everybody wants to establish as an artist. You want to be able to play something and people say, "Oh, that's so and so." You can
yeah,
just tell. So I think that's more what I'm interested in when I hear players like Trevor Gordon Hall, great friend of mine, and we actually did an album. This is coming out next spring. Triplicity. It's a trio project with Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall. But I love when I hear players and it's like I haven't heard anyone quite like that. And if I hear you play again, I'm just gonna know it's you.
right.
That's what's so great when you find that.
Yeah, and I think that's the most fun of it is to keep discovering things and keep moving forward because when you talk to your guys that may have been heroes of yours for 30 years or 40 years, they're still looking to be inspired and to get excited and they will diffuse some of the praise and like, look, it's great to
Yeah.
hear, but uh, it doesn't benefit your music or your creativity to soak in that kind of stuff.
So right. That is so true. And there was a quote from Jimi Hendrix. I can't think of it right now, but hopefully somebody can look it up. There's a great quote from him about humility and how he just he didn't even like to hear that stuff just because it can distract you. If everyone's telling you great, you might start believing it. So that's a dangerous thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, always just trying to focus on the craft. Is the main thing when you sit down and you're gonna come up with something new or whatever. Just
Yeah.
think about what you want to say.
Yeah. The thing about you were talking about having a nylon string guitar and trying to play Crazy Train or whatever Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard tune might have been, you know, that you were exposed to on nylon string. Uh, it's it's a very difficult thing when you're playing acoustic and to when you're younger to know about timbre and all that kind of stuff and your inability to bend strings, especially on a classical guitar, like you would on an electric guitar. But the
Mhm.
key to playing acoustic guitar is when you typically learn first position chords, all the standard chords, all the major, minor, and seventh chords. But the first time that you stumble onto something as simple as maybe just dropping your low and high E down, like on Song for George by Eric Johnson,
Yeah.
and strumming
Hmm.
a chord, what would be a D sus2 chord, but strum that chord backward, you kind of go, I'm I'm not I'm not where I was before. I'm in a new place.
Yeah.
And I remember the excitement for myself, the most amazing thing that I had ever heard in an altered tuning to that point, because I'm a huge Frank Zappa fan, when I heard Michael do Sofa.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's so good.
I just thought, man, that was just, and I absolutely had to learn it. And I found this website that was called Root Witch, and it had a bunch of
Yeah.
transcriptions of Michael's stuff. And I just
Hmm.
I just printed off everything I could, and I just started working on that entire Oracle album. And to this day, I
Um,
think that might be there's some Pierre Ben Susan stuff and your stuff and some other players, but that Oracle album just hit me so hard. I thought, man, what this is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it is so good. I absolutely adore that album. That one and Aerial Boundaries are my two like top, Michael Hedges albums. But I'm a fan of it all. But yeah, when I heard Soph on there too, when he was playing with a pick, and
Yeah.
you're used to hearing him doing a lot of tapping and so on. But he did get quite a bit into picking and developing that. What did he call heavy mental style? I think he called it picking a lot like that. But yeah. Uh, that tune is so cool. That arrangement is incredible. And when you were talking about "Song for George," yeah, that was really one of the first altered tunings I heard too, with the drop double D kind of thing. And I
Yeah.
think what was so cool about that was the two D's next to each other,
Yeah.
the high string and then the third fret on the second string. And you mentioned timbre. That's kind of where you start to hear, oh, that's what an open string sounds like, and that's what a fretted one sounds like. You
Yeah.
can hear a real subtle difference between the two. They're the same pitch, but
Yeah.
one's fretted and one's open, and yeah, really cool.
My journey was, and I'm really a fan. I love playing in open tunings, but I dedicated more of my life to playing electric guitar than acoustic. But the stuff that I have discovered, it came much later. It was kind of like I discovered, I think I discovered Michael first with the altered tuning stuff like Sofa, and then it was um Lawrence Juber and some of the stuff that he was doing. But it took me a while to come all the way back around to David Crosby and Joni Mitchell, like Guinevere and some of Joni's tunings, and then took me even longer to go back to like Bert Jansen and all those, the
Yeah.
Renborn and those guys,
Yeah.
those players. I was wondering, were those players that were on your radar, or have they come in like me at different points in time? Did you have somebody kind of guiding you, say, "Hey, check this out. You're on this path. This might be something to."
Yeah. Well, my dad was a big fan of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, actually. So,
Yeah.
I heard quite a bit of their stuff growing up. But like Joni Mitchell, I never really heard much of her when I was growing up, though. But as I got into guitar playing and I'd see interviews with Michael Hedges, and he'd say, "Well, Joni Mitchell's the queen of altered tunings." So I was like, "What? Who is she again?" And then Paved Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot. I remember hearing that, and that was kind of the main song that I knew her for. But I kind of found out more about her music a few years later. I started touring with Don Ross and his wife Brooke Miller, and they were telling me a lot about Joni and checking her out, and started looking at like Hajira and stuff, and just really love her catalog. I mean, she's an incredible songwriter uh, and just so creative, and that's why like Pat Metheny and Chaco Pastorius and everybody wanted to play with her. It was just
Yeah.
they were probably knew so much more theory and everything than she knows, but she's just a creative force that was totally unique, So yeah, she without her, I don't know where Michael would have been, and I don't know where I'd be, kind of thing, So there's kind of a lineage there in a way, but the guys in Pentangle, like John Renborn and Bert Yanch, I found out about them a bit after that. Even I started to go to England quite a bit early in my career. I used to go like twice a year touring over there, and so people would mention them a lot, and so I started to check them out and check out some videos that were on YouTube from back in the '60s and stuff. Pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a period of time where I was it was in the mid 90s where I was feeling like, man, maybe because I love so many acoustic players, I was getting into Preston Reed and Phil Keggy and Martin Simpson.
Hmm.
Kind of it was a point where I felt like maybe this is the way to go, but it never quite caught on. But I have such an affinity for folks that not only possess great facility on the instrument, but have great compositions, because it it's coming up with an arrangement in an altered tuning and how you arrive on those things. I know it's not something that every song is different, but it's amazing to me how you come upon these tunings. And is it based on composition, or also based on what a particular instrument can withstand so far as intonation. Some tunings may not in tune well, or
Hmm.
I should say, they should not. Maybe it's. Could you maybe illuminate for anybody that doesn't know about alter tunings what some of the pitfalls or difficulties with alter tunings when it comes to intonation and that sort of thing?
Sure. Yeah. So the alter tunings, for me, like, I try to keep it within a certain nebulous, I guess, or something. Like, uh, I don't tend to go below a C on the low string on a standard pitch guitar. So two whole steps. I do on a couple songs go down to B, but once you kind of get past there, it starts to get real tricky. Sometimes I'll tune the strings up too. So like on a standard guitar, I'll tune the sixth string up to F sharp. Like for my tune Art of Motion, it has an F sharp in the sixth string. And I guess on a couple of my other songs, I have the fifth string up to a C. So that's kind of up a step and a half on the fifth string. But those are kind of the most extreme things. Maybe there's one other one. On the first string, I go up to F sharp a whole step. So that's kind of getting risky too. But
Yeah,
so I tend to stay like in C or D tunings, mostly, just to kind of not stretch and push things too far where I'm going to break a string.
right. And then the other thing that comes with that is the um, your ability to play like open string runs in that tuning,
Hmm.
not unlike what you would hear maybe um, like a Chet Atkins thing where he's playing open scales with a combination of two
Oh
free
yeah,
open string, those cascading.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I know this kind of thing, like where you might hit something, those kind of where you incorporate the open string, like those kind of deals going down. But yeah, yeah, with the alter tunings, yeah, you can take advantage of those, and you can get like chord voicings that wouldn't be possible in standard tuning. So that's kind of what really drew me into the alter tuning world. You said something about like some of the pitfalls. So I mean, I guess the worst thing about it is you kind of are erasing everything you know about the fretboard when you start messing around with these tunings in any major way. But but that could be a pitfall. But I kind of like that a bit in some ways. It's like I'm forced to kind of explore a bit and see what I can find. So I don't instantly start just nailing some new composition when I'm in a weird tuning. I'm kind of finding chords and starting to hear ideas develop kind of in my head. Like, well, maybe there's a melody that could fit over this, or come up with a cool riff that might not be possible in standard tuning. So that's what I like about the standard tuning, and you can get the open strings, that sort of timbre like we were talking about, and all these new harmonics too that you'll have that you wouldn't have in the standard tuning. So you can incorporate those in different ways as well. So yeah.
Do you have any percussion background that ran concurrent with your guitar playing that helped you doing some of the percussive stuff and where you're
I wanted to play drums initially. Actually, that was the first thing I wanted to do. And we moved to New Mexico for a little while in about 1988. And when we moved down there, I asked my mom if I could rent a drum kit. So that was my first real attempt at an instrument. But I didn't. That wasn't even a real attempt. I didn't have any lessons or anything like that. So it just kind of sat in the garage, and I banged on it a few times. But I wanted to play drums, just didn't have the full motivation yet, I guess, at that age. I had to turn it into a teenager, I guess, to get that focus or something. But that's when I switched to the guitar. So, but I always liked drums, like in music too. Like when I got into Dream Theater, and progressive rock, and they're always using weird time signatures. And I'm hearing what Mike Portnoy's doing on the kit, and I'm like, that is so cool. And just trying to figure out, what was going on there, even though I didn't play drums. So I've always kind of been drawn to the rhythm section.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a marvel to listen to players like yourself too, because it seems like what you're doing. Well, it is sleight of hand in one sense that the things that are happening um, simultaneously that are all connected but seem like they're several players. There's times when it sounds like a percussionist and two guitar players. That illusion of keeping keeping the pocket going, because it's it's a very important skill for every musician. Um, but you have the support of a bandmate if you're perhaps rushing a little bit or whatever, or maybe behind. But when you're out there on your own creating the groove, your time has to be impeccable, and to be able to carry on so many um, things simultaneously. I'm always curious, is it something that you have to break down parts and learn things separate from one another and then put them together?
Um, well, I
Or
appreciate that. That you have to have some pretty good time to be able to do these things. I was actually just yesterday working with a metronome. I was working on flat picking. I really don't do a whole lot of flat picking, but I decided to. Sorry,
I saw your post of you
you saw the video.
metronome, and I think you said sorry if it's a little loud, but no.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous because the metronome's in my phone. And I recorded the video with my phone, so the metronome's like but yeah, so I don't think I had a real great feel for time when I started playing the guitar necessarily. You know I didn't like to dance or anything, or just didn't drum my fingers really or anything like that. But as I got more and more into music, I just started to pay attention to rhythm and timing more, and I just love to drum on everything all the time these days. If I'm driving the car and uh, drumming on the steering wheel, or I've got a Roland V drum kit over there in the corner too. So, but anyway, when you said like playing two different things at once, or two different rhythms, kind of. I did actually try to study some ragtime piano in the late '90s. I saw a documentary on Scott Joplin, and they played like Maple Leaf Rag and The Entertainer and a few other ones, and I thought the Maple Leaf Rag sounded like the coolest thing, and I was like, man, if I could play that on piano, I'd be happy. So I got the sheet music for it, and I don't even really read sheet music very well at all. Like, it takes me forever, and I just really carefully went through it, and eventually could play it. So, but I think doing that helped with rhythm, because it's ragtime is so syncopated, and the do do the dead do dead do do dead. So you got these two things, and I think that was a real benefit for getting rhythm in my hands and just feeling rhythm in general. Really, when you're on the beat, off the beat. And when I went to arrange something like Africa finally on the guitar several years later, I had that experience of playing two different rhythms, and the dun, 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 dun. I'm on a baritone guitar here, otherwise I'd maybe play it for you, but it'll sound really low and weird. but doing this thing,
Yeah.
I'm not going to play these over here because it's just so weird. It's super low. But just having those two rhythms at once, and feeling that. And then even when you're doing straight finger style too, a lot of times you're doing alternating bass with your thumb, and then you've got something else going over here with your fingers. And so, feeling that in each finger as you go, and just developing that sense of timing, that was really crucial. And I think it helps me to be able to do it as a solo guitar player on stage.
Yeah. Or do you have the benefit of having relatively strong nails, or do you have to fortify them with like acrylic or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I've actually got my fingernails pretty short on my fingers here, other than my thumbnail, which is kind of long. But yeah, I've always just played that way. I think the main reason I don't have fingernails on the fingers here is because of the tapping, and I had gotten into tapping on the acoustic guitar kind of early on into the fingerstyle journey, and so I wanted to be able to tap and do finger picking. And I learned tapping on electric guitar originally, so I always had this kind of really direct approach to the string. So having a fingernail just was so troublesome. I just said, well, it's going to do without. But I have friends that do grow their nails out, and they have sort of more of an angle, like 45 degrees when they tap. But I'm just so used to doing that, just kept it that way.
Yeah. Is it a difficult thing to keep your guitars the action comfortable for you to play? I mean, are you having to make constant refinements, like, especially in the fall and the winter and that sort of thing? I don't know what
Uh,
your climate is,
the
but
Yeah, these actually hold up pretty well throughout the year. These are Michael Greenfield guitars, and your viewers can check out greenfieldguitars.com if they want to learn some more. But he has these like custom built, and the bracing inside and everything is totally unique. And this is designed like for fingerstyle guitar, and it has a longer scale length and fanned frets and all this stuff. So I've seemed to have no trouble with the action over through the seasons though. So
And how is that particular guitar tuned that you have there?
yeah, so this is a baritone. So it's B-E-A-D-F sharp B, and it's just like a standard guitar, but a fourth lower, same intervals. So this is a say again.
It's a baritone, but standard tuning, so you're starting on B rather than E. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Exactly, yeah. So like this is an E chord instead of an A, and that's an A instead of a D. But yeah, I always like the sound of those baritones. I've always loved the sound of bass too. I played bass in a high school band for a couple of years and tried to learn some techniques, on that. But I've always been drawn a little bit more to the lower side of the spectrum, I guess, and the lower pitch. And I have another guitar like this, but it's a fourth higher than the regular guitar, a soprano guitar, and I just don't play it so much. It's a little too twinkly. I like the low end on this deal. So.
Is does do different rooms that you're playing in when you're I mean, because I would imagine that you're playing anything from a theater to a performing arts center to places like that that sound
Mm-hmm.
great in and of themselves, but there might be different characteristics of them being, more reverberant or darker or whatever. Is it is it a longer process to sound check to get you into a space where you feel ready to perform? Is it harder to get the sound that you like for
It
because
really isn't actually. Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty quick. I usually 30 minutes tops, like at a sound check. I like to keep it pretty simple, and I just take a little preamp and a reverb pedal, and I've got it sounding how I like it to sound. The preamp. So once it gets to the board, and we've got to come through the speakers, if there's anything that sounds off, or if there's a frequency that's taken off, we'll cut that, and I like to have the subs kicking a bit with some of the percussion, and playing on the baritone guitar. Those subs rocking is real nice. But and then just a bit of reverb too. I kind of like a hall reverb, and that's about it.
yeah, is it and I would uh, since I'm speaking to a master guitar acoustic guitarist, is it piezo or piezo? I don't know.
I think it's piezo. It looks very clearly like an Italian word to me, and if
Wife's
if it
Italian.
is,
I ask her, sweetie, how do I pronounce this? Piezo or piezo? She would probably say piezo. Yeah.
Piezo, yeah, yeah. The I sound is like an E, over in Italian. So I think piezo, pretty sure.
Piezo, and is there any internal mic that we're dealing with as well, or what's?
Oh, on the guitar here. Yeah, I've got the K and K Pure Mini inside all of my guitars actually, and the harp guitar has two of them. But there's three sort of contact pickups that are attached to the soundboard here, and that's it, and goes out. And I used to have a internal mic as well, but I would sometimes get feedback issues from the mic, and I just decided, well, try it without the mic, and I thought it sounded great just like that. So I've just been going that way for several years now.
Yeah, and just very happy. Yeah, I've heard that K and K is kind of the gold standard for live application.
Yeah, I've been using it this entire time, since about 2004, I think. I remember I saw a great guitar player named Tony McManus, kind of a Celtic fingerstyle player, really great. He was playing at the Canadian Guitar Festival, and his sound was phenomenal. And had to ask him what he was using, and so he was using that K&K, and that's been it for me ever since.
Yeah, I think the first person I was aware of that made me aware of the brand was David Crosby, perhaps. Used
Oh, okay.
so, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's for somebody that doesn't do a lot of acoustic stuff live. When you go to do acoustics, it's a bit of a challenge, and I think a lot of it can be if you're there's so many varying levels of quality when it comes to acoustics. There's kind of a consumer grade that's almost pro grade.
Hmm.
Maybe harder to get something to expect something like that to perform as well. But when you're dealing with it makes sense that when you're dealing with a beautiful instrument like that, it probably takes not a lot to get it across the finish line where you want it to be, because the luthier has designed an instrument that's 98% of the way there.
Yeah, these things sound incredible unplugged, so it really was just trying to get as natural a sound, of the guitar if it weren't plugged in, to come out, just as accurate representation. Of course, microphones like in front of the guitar sound great, but if you're up on a stage moving around even just a bit, you can really change the sound. So I decided to go with the K&K Pure Minis because of that.
Yeah. The first time I think I'd ever seen a harp guitar, I think Robbie Robertson of the band had one.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I never got to see Michael play one live, but I was fortunate enough to see Muriel Anderson play one.
Hmm.
It's
Awesome.
Seeing it live is a whole different thing than, if you're watching a video and going, "Oh, that's kind of cool." When you're in
Yeah.
the room hearing it, it's like, "Oh my gosh, that's just an amazing."
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible, man. My dad was a fan of the band, and I think he had that the last waltz was it video, and he had a Gibson U style harp guitar, if I remember, in that video. Um, but the first time I really recall actually seeing one was in a magazine with Michael Hedges on the cover. I think it was a guitar player, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. I actually wasn't even familiar with Michael at that point yet, but I was given about 300 old guitar magazines by a cousin who's a bit of a collector and a great guitar player. And so I got all these magazines and saw this one with Michael and thought, what's that about? And there was actually a record inside there, a little sound page, they called them, and tear it out, a little vinyl, and put it on. And he was playing Because It's There. And I was just blown away, and became it became my biggest musical influence almost overnight, I guess. But I never got to see Michael play though either, actually. And so the first time I really got to see someone play it was Stephen Bennett at the Walnut Valley Festival. It's held down in Winfield, Kansas. Big bluegrass festival, and they have the International Fingerstyle Guitar Championships there, and International Auto Harp Championships too. They got all these fiddle and banjo and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I saw Stephen actually playing the harp guitar, and he's an incredible musician. I just was texting with him yesterday, and he's just one of the most melodic, acoustic guitar players I've ever known, and a good friend. And anyway, after seeing him play there, he actually sold me the harp guitar he was playing on stage that day. Probably about a year later or so, and that was my first harp guitar, the Ron Spiller's harp guitar. He was a dentist in Virginia that just built one for fun. So it wasn't.
Yeah, so I'm gonna call Stu Mack as, "Hey, you guys get a kit for a harp guitar? Send one."
Right, yeah. You got to find dentists in the hills of Virginia to build you one, kind of thing. But that was my harp guitar for a long time, and then I finally got Michael Greenfield. I convinced him to build one, and so I have a really beautiful harp guitar from him, made of koa on the back and sides, and has sharpening levers up on the harp strings and stuff, and kind of some bells and whistles. So it's really cool.
The one thing that I admire about the acoustic guitar, which might sound like a strange thing, is if it needs to be given approval. But one of the what I'm always struck by, I should say, is that whether you go to see somebody like yourself or Tommy Emmanuel or Lawrence Juber, any of the players that we could go on and on and on, whether you're seeing them live or in a living room or just about any application on somebody's deck while you're having a fire and some wine and somebody's really playing as beautifully as you, you can capture people and just completely win them over and take them somewhere else, because it's just so engaging to hear so much music. To me, even more than somebody playing beautiful piano. Not to denigrate a great piano player, but I think it's the highest calling musically to play acoustic at that level that a handful of you guys are on, because there's so many different colors and timbres, and especially in alto tunings and baritone guitars and all this kind of stuff. You really go, man, I don't know that I've heard anything more beautiful when you're like in the room with it, because you've got like it would be really hard to do that on the electric guitar, just due to the issues of it being too loud or whatever. It's, or too soft, or just having that dynamic range. I just think it's, and unlike a violin, which is also beautiful, it's not a chordal instrument. It doesn't have
Mhm.
all that to say is, uh, what you guys are doing is kind of, it seems to me, state of the art, or the highest. It's like some sort of, you're doing God's work with playing guitar, because it really is. When you're in the room hearing it, it really, whether somebody's come to see you in like a small clinic setting or Tommy Emmanuel, you walk away going, wow, that's, I really heard something there that moved me, rather just beyond technique. It moved me. It rearranged me. Uh,
Yeah, man. That's really cool that you said that. I had a show just a few days ago up in New Hampshire, in Portsmouth, a place called Jimmy's Jazz and Blues Club, and it's a really really nice venue, and the hospitality is so good. The people there, they give you a meal, which is like a steak, and all this, grilled vegetables, and then they give you another one when you leave. They're like, here, take another one, and they do that every time you play there. Just the hospitality is so good, but anyway, I just wanted to give them a shout out because there's so cool people there. But anyway, it was a sold out show, so I was like, man, this is great. I haven't actually played a show in a bit. I haven't done a lot of touring this year, so I was a bit curious if anybody remembered me out there. But it was nice to have a full house. But I made some mistakes in the show, and I broke a string. So I've had that happen before on stage, and it's like you got to think of something to say for the next few minutes as you change a string. And I started to play one song that a friend of mine requested, and I completely forgot it about 5 seconds into it. It was so strange because he actually requested it before I went on stage, and I practiced it a bit. It's like, oh yeah, I got this, and then total blank slate. So I went backstage in the second set, and went over it a couple times, and it was like, oh yeah, boom, and then went out and played it okay. It was kind of like when you look at a word and it just doesn't look like it's spelled right. You're just like, what is that? What is going on? But it's totally spelled right. It's just sitting there, but you just kind of have a weird brain moment. But anyway, all that to say, I felt like it wasn't a perfect show in that sense. I didn't nail everything, but I felt like I was the most kind of free on stage I'd ever been ever. I was just saying goofy stuff, and people were laughing, and it felt like maybe the best show I'd ever done. But I had kind of screwed those things up in the meantime. But after the show, another one of my friends came up and said, "Man, there was really just a vibe in the air. He's seen me a few times, and he said that was the best show I've seen you do." And I was sitting here thinking, well, I mean, I screwed those things up, but what was it? And it had to be this feeling like you're just talking about, trying to create that feeling in the room for everybody, like and that was, I almost felt like I got an education that night. Like, oh, I learned something here. Like, it's okay. I've always been so meticulous about trying to deliver a good performance. And but what does that mean? Does it mean not missing any notes, or does it just mean creating that feeling between everyone in the room, like we're all in this together with this music, and we're all feel this way, and I'm the one that has to kind of set that vibe in the room. That's a bit of a weight on your shoulders, but if you just let yourself be free and happy and just do your thing, everybody's going to feel it and they're going to love it. And so that just happened about 3 or 4 days ago. So it was really, really cool to have, and to feel like I really learned something new, that I should think about shows differently, maybe.
and you have a connection with the venue, and you have a connection with the audience, and you realize that, it's the humanity of it, and just making connections. And
Yeah.
there's I've been doing several interviews in the last 2 months, coming up with season 3, and it's been exceeded my wildest dreams because it's many, many of my heroes, including yourself. And one of the conceptual continuity or the through line through this is just about humanity and just how being kind to one another and loving.
Mm.
Because we went through a period of time where we thought maybe it was a silly thought perhaps, but maybe live music's going to go away with this whole thing that we went through in 2020. And we
Hmm.
came back to it, and it's kind of a renewed sense of, man, isn't this special what we get to do as musicians to go out and perform and connect and uh, so it's wonderful to hear you say that uh, you were able to through all that thing realize mistakes really don't matter because they got to see the human side of you because otherwise they may have just gone, man, does this guy ever make a mistake?
Right. How boring is that? I know.
So it allows them to connect with you deeper, perhaps,
Yeah.
and it inspires, and the
Yeah.
other thing is there's young Andys out in the audience that are maybe 10 or 12 or 14 or whatever, that may be the impetus for them to go on and have a brilliant career. Like you will be
Yeah.
to them, and I know this to be true, that you are to many people what Michael was to you. I know that for a fact. And
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
because you know how Michael meant to you.
Yeah.
To know that
Yeah.
you're doing that for other people. Will you get to meet them? Perhaps. Maybe you already have, maybe through email correspondence or people hitting you up on social media. But yeah, people are looking to you with admiration and wanting to do what you're doing. Like say, so it's a beautiful thing. Comes from,
Yeah. I guess it does. Yeah, I love to meet fans after shows. I do that every show. I love to, you know, hear people's stories or whatever, and just get to shake their hand and everything. And so, there is sometimes younger people who say that. I always just try to deflect that by thinking, well, they just haven't heard Michael Hedges yet. They just haven't heard Michael, so I don't have to. I don't have to take on the responsibility of being
there's probably been situations where you've met somebody that was a hero and they said something like that, like, yeah, thanks, that's great, but Eric Johnson would deflect that and say, yeah, but you know, Cream era Eric Clapton was
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
Electric Ladyland. Jimi Hendrix was the high watermark. So I think we were always looking to our heroes and saying thank you, but these are I'm standing on the shoulders of so and so.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's always been really important to me, because I just kind of realized the way that my career took off on the internet, 20 years ago almost now, that it's just, there's probably the majority of these people haven't heard Michael Hedges or Preston Reed maybe or Don Ross or Glenn McLaughlin, So I've always really tried to make sure that people know about them too, just because I just wouldn't even be doing this without them. So
Yeah. It's nice when somebody that you admire and that you maybe cover one of their songs speaks so highly of you. Steve Lukather adores you and has said so many things about Andy. Oh, he's such a sweet man. He's a lot of great.
yeah.
I got to see him
Yeah.
in January at the G4 um, Joe Satriani camp, and he was there.
Oh, did you go to that?
It's fabulous. It was really a once in a lifetime experience. But he was singing your praises, and Andy Timmons as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, man. Jeez, dude. Lukather, of course, just an absolute legend, and I've loved his playing since I was a kid. And when I did that cover of Africa, that kind of took off on YouTube as well. And I remember seeing he and I think maybe David Page were commenting on it, and I was just blown away. And then Steve, well, I think it was Toto. Yeah, it was Toto. They played not too far from where I live, and so I went to see him, in 2006 or something, and got to meet him, and it's like and then he came to a show in LA, and then we actually got to record together on a Lee Ritenour project called Six String Theory. So yeah, 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 I loved that. That was a lot of fun. We did a version of Drifting, and then we did Shape of My Heart by Sting, and just awesome. And I actually got Lukather to listen to the new Trio record too to see what he thought about it. And he was like, "This is getting a Grammy, guys." I was like, "Ah!" So we'll see. It's coming out in the spring. We'll see what happens. But that, just it just seems like I'm in another universe sometimes. Steve Lukather even knows who I am. What?
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. But very cool. And Andy Timmons, he's wonderful, man. Whenever I'm in the Dallas area, we try to get together and connect. So he's a lovely guy and super killer player, and just incredible.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's been such a treat is because these guys have been such huge heroes to find out that they're so down to earth and so kind and so excited to hear what you're up to. No matter who you are, if you're a musician, they want to know like what are you up to? What have you been doing? What do you like? What do you? So it really
Yeah.
is a way of washing over all the negative stuff that we see, in social media, or the knucklehead that will post something. Prior to the Eddie thing, I know there was some knucklehead that posted something about chords or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it just struck me as so absurd. It was like I've always been into like absurd humor, like Monty Python and Tim and Eric and stuff. It's just to have someone like come on to a video I posted and ask if I can actually play whole songs. It just was, I guess this guy, I couldn't tell if he was like serious or if he was a fan and he was kind of kidding. So I just was like, no, period. I can't play whole songs. And he's like, oh, it was just, he came back with something else. It was just, I don't, yeah, that stuff, it doesn't really bother me. I just thought it was so absurd. It was kind of funny. So I shared it. But yeah, that kind of stuff did definitely bother me early on, though, when some of those internet things were happening. Like sometimes, people would post my song on their MySpace page and say they wrote it, and I was just trying to get my career going. And, it's just unfortunate that, some people see the internet as a way to just be really rude for no reason. There's no point in that.
Yeah.
But
One thing that I had read, and I don't have all the details. It's a little fuzzy about playing with Prince.
yeah, that was really crazy. That was in 2012. I think it was around the end of 2011. My manager had emailed me and said that he just got an email from someone saying they were Prince's manager and that he was interested in getting together sometime. And it's just like, holy cow, this is nuts. And so he said he wanted to verify, if it was real, and he dug around and it turned out it was real. So I flew up to Minneapolis and I picked up in a limousine and went to the hotel, and the bass player, Ida Nielsen is her name, and John Blackwell, who's was the drummer, but he's passed away sadly. They were there, and then we got together and went to Paisley Park and kind of walked in, and there's this sort of foyer and these doves all in these cages up on a balcony, and all of a sudden Prince came out and he said, "Let's go to Studio One," and we all go in there, and he has me just kind of play some fingerstyle guitar stuff, and said he really liked it and asked what I was going to be doing later in the year. And that year was really wild because I toured with Dream Theater as well in Asia, opening for them. And so next thing I know, Prince booked like 9 shows in Australia. And so when I finished with Dream Theater, it was like in Thailand, and then I just flew straight to Australia and picked up with Prince, and we did like 3 shows in Brisbane, 3 in Melbourne, and 3 in Sydney. And I was just kind of a special guest. At one point, they brought me up on this elevator in the middle of the stage and played some tunes with them, a little medley of about 4 or 5 songs. And one other thing that was really wild about that was right before I went down there, they sent me an email saying, "This is your outfit," and they wanted me to wear this 50-foot long cape. And it was, I got drawings of it that they sent me, and just had this huge flowing cape, and then have images projected on the back of the cape like it was sort of a screen, and it'd be like stars and flames and all this stuff. And I don't know why, but I just felt too nervous about the cape, and I ended up not doing the cape bit. But I sent him a sort of acoustic version of Purple Rain, and he liked that. So I opened the shows with an acoustic version of Purple Rain, and ended up putting that on an album called Symbol a few years ago too.
Aren't you glad that you didn't bring your 50-foot cape from home?
That would have been embarrassing.
To have two 50. Look, Prince, I've got one already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got several actually.
Collector set, yeah.
Yeah, red, purple, you name it.
It's for my
Love my 50 cape.
My early Liberace days, opening.
Liberace days, yeah. Sequin.
I mean, at some point you have to think, okay, I'm going to wake up to the sound of my mom saying, "Andy, it's time for school. Andy, get up, Andy." I feel like it's like the end of that Bob Newhart show where he wakes up and he's with the original wife from the earlier TV set. You feel like I'm just going to wake up from this dream because I'm opening for Dream Theater. I'm in Thailand, and then I'm flying to go to play with Prince, and then do some shows with him. And they're talking of a 50-foot. It sounds surreal.
Yeah, completely.
All the things that you're describing sounds like some sort of very strange music dream thing, that a lot of non sequiturs, things that don't make sense. Almost Python-esque, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a fingerstyle acoustic guitar player. What the hell is this? This is the weirdest dream ever. Yeah, even to this day. I mean, I feel like this just all been very strange, in a way. Couldn't have ever imagined all this stuff, and I feel very lucky for it, of course, too. But just getting to do the guitar, for a living and music. When I was 14, after just playing for a year, I felt like I wanted to do something with music, but I was pretty confident I was just going to be a guitar teacher in the back studio, the music store, and hopefully my wife would have a decent job, but so it's been very wild, and I couldn't have imagined any of that, but it's just been a lot of fun too, but in spite of all those other little accolades like that, though, just the main thing is, that my music has affected people, and that some people picked up the guitar because of it, or some people use it, at their wedding, or when their dad passed away, and just when I get those kinds of messages, that's just like, it's really blows my mind still to this day. It'll never get old or unimportant to me. If another person says that tomorrow, it'll still blow my mind. So it's been wild and great.
Yeah, it's beautiful when really good things happen to really good people. That karmically, or whatever you want to say, that positivity is coming back. The more you put out, the more it comes back to you.
Yeah, it's important to do that.
So it's in that spirit. I have to thank you for being so gracious with your time, and man, what a fun conversation. I learned a lot.
Hey, my pleasure, man. And yeah, I had a great time. I could go for another hour, but shoot. Well, I'm honored to be a part of it, man. Thanks, John. And
sounds good. Thanks, man.
Take care.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for tuning in to the Guitar Hang Podcast. Interviews with noteworthy guitar players from around the world. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications to stay updated on our latest episodes.